Every Saturday morning, of course, Harold Peacock joins Dr. Dan and recounts some wonderful Ipswich stories, including this one about Paddy's prison love.
Yeah, well, it came from last week because I told you about the life and times of Ipswich's Harry Foley from the 1840s. And you remember, he came to Ipswich as a policeman, opened a pub, cavorted with convicts, employed a raving lunatic, charged with murdering his wife, and his daughter even married a massacre survivor. And a number of people from last week's story have asked to know more about his lunatic employee, and that was Patrick Foley, who was better known back then as Paddy the Horse.
Paddy the Horse.
So,
is that his nickname, Paddy the Horse?
That's right.
Well, we know why. When I played rugby, we had a few donkeys, but no horses.
Well, in 1849, Patrick Foley, our Paddy the Horse, was employed as a cook at the Travellers' Home Hotel on Nicholas Street in Ipswich. And he proved absolutely useless and so wasn't paid his wages. Paddy complained, he bolted when he wasn't paid, and was jailed for 7 days for breaching the Hired Servants Act. Now, Paddy
what was it,
came
mate?
under the watchful...
Just for a second. Was that called the Hired Servants Act?
Servants Act.
Wow.
Once you signed a contract, you couldn't leave. It's the same as today, really.
Same as rugby league today.
Yeah, that's right. But Paddy then came under the watchful eye of Ipswich's Dr. William von Losberg. Now, Dr. von Losberg was the same doctor who was later the first medical practitioner on the scene at the St Mary's School tragedy. Remember that? Two students killed?
Yeah.
He caused controversy with his autopsies at the Gatton murders. Remember that? There was 3 people killed.
That's right.
And he testified to the low intellect of the last woman sentenced to hang in Queensland. If you remember, she unfortunately, sadly, killed a baby. Anyway, Dr. von Losberg suspected Paddy the Horse may be insane, and so he sent him to Brisbane jail for treatment. Anyway, later, when Paddy was living at the Goodna Lunatic Asylum, Paddy escaped a working gang while he was in the bush, and he was probably under the watch of the warder, William Brush. Now, Brush had previously been the first policeman in Wales. He had been the guard for Queen Victoria at Buckingham Palace and St James's Palace in London, and would even later become Ipswich's oldest warder. Anyway, when Paddy escaped Brush's watch, that was when escapes by lunatics from the asylum were actually rather frequent. And in Paddy's case, he was particularly keen to remain escaped. And so Paddy determinedly threw large boulders down at Waterbrush as he ran away. Now, Paddy was never taken back into confinement. That's because, tragically, that day in 1874, Paddy the Horse lost his life when he drowned during his bid for freedom.
Wow.
But that's not where Paddy's story ends.
Wow.
You see, while the warder William Brush escaped with not having his brains knocked out by Paddy's boulders, his children grew up listening to stories of his Goodna adventures. One daughter was particularly enamoured by amazing tales of Paddy the Horse and others, and in 1913 she herself became a warder with the Queensland Prison Service. She was Ipswich-born Gertrude Brush. Now, her first posting in 1913 was to the Brisbane prison, and that's where she met and fell in love with the chief warder, John Murphy.
Wow.
And so Gertrude and John got married that same year, and together the Murphys became Australia's first power couple of the prison system. You see, for the next 20 years, for the early part of the 20th century, the Murphys served together as a couple as superintendent and chief matron in prisons across the state.
Conflict of
including the big
interest.
ones, of course.
Conflict.
Well, they were in Townsville, Rockhampton and Brisbane, but they were the power couple of the prison system. And so Australia's first prison power couple, they would never have happened if it wasn't for Ipswich's own Patrick Foley, or better known as Paddy the Horse, who was a lunatic who rose to fame in the 1840s. So you never know when the current history has actually been created. And we've got to thank Paddy the horse.
And there you go. That's Harold. That's how Harold tells it right here on the Brekkie Club. And of course, you can catch him with Dr. Dan every Saturday morning between 6 and 9 right here on West Bromwich Radio. And he's also got a fabulous website, Damo.
He certainly does. Check out historyouthere.com and you'll be able to relive that story and many others as well.